Okay, here we are back with the vinyl therapy number 6, and we have a guest today. Chris had a little family situation, so he couldn't make it in the last minute. We wish him and his family well, and we have from Birmingham, England, in the UK, John, 6-inch pianist, 319, and we got the Wax, Rob of the Wax, who's in Santa Monica, California. Is there any other Santa Monica? I think just California, the West Coast.
No, there might be one somewhere else.
Oh, okay. And Fred Putterman's from some shithole in Texas. So
that's exactly right.
Which there's a lot of shitholes in Texas, but anyway. All right. So what we're going to do today, we decided to do a little showcase of labels we like. Are they our favorite labels? Does it matter? And when we go through, we each chose 3 labels, and we might show a selection of albums from those 3 labels. We'll go around and we'll just hang out and chat for 1 hour. So you have the therapy session, and you are well adjusted after this. Okay. So let's have our guest, John, start out with his first therapy label offering.
Right. Okay. I'm going to start off with a very obvious choice, and that being Island Records. So I can't work out where I am. So yeah, Island Records. So, and the reason why I'm showing, talking about Island, is because I think that within my collection, the records that are put out on Island are some of the best sounding records that I own. Whether it be those early 80s Grace Jones records, albums like Nightclubbing with Sly and Robbie as a rhythm section. The production on those records is so crisp, fantastic sound. But of course, Island Records, along with the likes of Trojan in the UK, played a massive part in breaking reggae music. So obviously Chris Blackwell came up with this idea of trying to make a reggae artist, a mainstream artist, which is what he did with Bob Marley. You listen to that first Catch a Fire album, that was the first album that was put out on Island Records. You listen to the first 30 seconds of that album, you wouldn't know you're listening to a reggae album. It sounds like a mainstream rock record, and it falls into that reggae rhythm. Chris Blackwell clearly knew what he was doing. He was trying to attract a new audience, which is what Bob Marley did, of course. But this album that I'm showing here, this is on Island Records. This is Super 8, one of the great dub records, mid-70s, produced by Lee Perry at the Black Ark. An absolutely wonderful record. Quite hard to find an original copy. I must have been in decent nick. But a brilliant sounding record once again. So yeah, that's what I'm saying about Island Records. A great sounding label.
Did Chris produce everything on Island? Chris Blackwell?
No. Here and there, bits and bobs. But he did use a lot of other producers. Although a lot of the same musicians played on the same record, but there's certainly an overlap there. But a brilliant label, so important for, breaking reggae music to the world, basically. But in particular, the early 80s sounding records, the likes of Robert Palmer as well, somebody who's never talked about in the VC, perhaps seen to being a little bit too pop, a little bit too cheesy, but he had a great blue-eyed soul voice, and those late 70s, early 80s Robert Palmer records on Island are absolutely fantastic.
Well, Sneakin' Sally is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah,
that's getting a kind of notice.
Resurgence.
Right now.
Yeah,
it is. Well, that album, Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley, that's basically a record produced by Alan Toussaint, and the backing band are the Meters. I mean, you couldn't get a funkier band than that, and great songs. So yeah, and that's his debut solo.
All
album.
those Lil George Littlefeet songs on side 1. That's
right.
Sweet. That runs together. It's an amazing record. Exactly.
Yeah, great record. This deserves a lot more attention.
I just looked. I have only one from Island in my collection, sadly, and it's surely after they've been sold off to. It's the Killers from my youth, so I'm sure this is a much different variation of the label than.
Well, when was it? When did they sell? When did Island get sold? In the 90s?
They got They had different. They went through different distribution labels, like every other label.
I have one in my want list by The Orb, but that's later as well than what you're talking about. But I did just add that record to my want list. So.
Yeah. All right, Fred, you're on here.
Oh, okay. So we're going straight into the labels today, huh?
Opposed to therapy?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes we show what we've been spinning lately,
Oh, we did. I didn't. Yeah.
make him big when he shows the albums.
That's right. I'm sorry, I blew
That's
it.
all right.
I'm out of practice.
So are we doing straight to the labels then?
Yeah, and we can show
Okay.
things after. We'll see.
Well,
All right, yeah. So I was on the fence about showing this one. A lot of people will know them, but some people may not. This is International Anthem stuff. So International Anthem is a label that I had a huge love affair with for a while. I was buying every single one of their releases, and I hate to say this, I've sort of fallen out of love with them lately. But when I was first, started to listen to jazz, it was really exciting that there was a contemporary label putting out contemporary artists regularly. And there's also this kind of collector's aspect to these. They all have the see if I can get that in there. They all have these colored spines, sort of in the way that like an Impulse looks nice on your shelf, but they're mostly doing stuff based out of Chicago. So this is Alabaster de Plume, who is a little odd for their label, but he has this. I still love this record. I do not like his vocal stuff at all. If there's any fans of his stuff, I apologize, but he's to Cyan Lee Instrumentals Volume 1. He's got this probably the softest tone on a sax that I've ever heard. It's almost like he barely puts breath through it. This is very peaceful and melodic music. Alabaster de Plume. I also pulled out Jamie Branch, who plays trumpet in the Chicago scene with a lot of different projects, but this is her Fly or Die. But like I said, when I was started collecting records, these labels were really exciting with like Gearbox, and Firehouse 12 is another one that I thought about pulling, that were putting out contemporary acts and regularly, so I did decide to showcase that for my first one. This one, one more thing about this one. This is Rob Mazurek, which I'm assuming not many people have listened to. He hangs out in Marfa, Texas, actually. I'm not sure if he lives there, but this one has, this is it's called the Exploding Star Orchestra. And this one has Rob Mazurek, Nicole Mitchell, who plays flute, is wonderful, Jeff Parker, Jamie Branch, Tamika Reed, Damon Locks, Joel Ross, who I think Mazzy likes on Vibraphone. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this is like this is a great record as well, and I do like the artwork. So International Anthem was my first one if you're looking for contemporary jazz stuff. So
cool. All right, Rob, you're on here.
Well, not as a commercial, but my buddy has a record company called Omnivore, and they're pretty much a reissue label. They do release new albums. They did the new Matthew Sweet album, Cat's Paw, that just came out. But I believe they won a Grammy for this album. I know they did a Hank Williams reissue they won a Grammy for. They make some great last year Record Store Day. They put us Art Pepper. A lot of their stuff is on CD. This is a great box set that you could still get from his Artist House albums. This just came out and people are really liking it. This Hassan Ibn Ali. This is archival, some recordings that college students did of him where he was kind of just in Philadelphia. And it's really good. And then they put out a couple Jocko albums. Here's one. I think you could still get this. One thing is they did the unreleased Big Star 3 album. So it comes in a various this is a orange variant from Newberry Comics that was exclusive, but you could still get this one. I think this is on their website right now. And they have the Posies and Camper Van Beethoven reissues. So, and one of my favorite bands is Jellyfish. They put out the vinyl version of this, TV Eyes, which has a couple of the guys from Jellyfish, Jason Faulkner and Roger Manning. So, go to their website, look at their stuff. It's good.
There you go. Well,
I do want that Hassan Ibn
Yeah,
Ali.
I think it's kind of, you could get that thing for like probably $70 right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. It went down a
That-
little bit.
Yeah.
so they picked up the Camper Van Beethoven on the Virgin record, right?
Yeah, they have a bunch of Camper Van Beethoven,
Huh.
I think, on their site, but they, I'm trying to get them to kind of do suggesting that they do certain things, but they have the reissue of the Van Dyke Parks and Brian Wilson
Yeah.
Orange Crate.
May I ask what is? I mean, I'm not usually all snoopy and snooty about pedigree, but what are their pedigrees in terms of digital sources, analog? I'm just curious. Do you know?
Well, like with regards to the Art Pepper, they're in business with his widow, so they have access to all the.
No, there's that
She's
makes
the
sense.
one who controls the estate.
So she wants them all analog cuts. The widow.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the best albums they put out, and I have to fish through my records, is they did a reissue of the Art Pepper Quintet that Kevin Gray mastered. It was for Record Store. It's on clear vinyl. I still think you can get the black version, the regular version. That's AAA. That thing sounds awesome. It's a great version of the album. So it's all over the place. They use a guy named Peter Graves who does a lot of their reissues, who remasters them.
He's got the Mission Impossible label.
No, but he won the Grammy, I think, for the Hank Williams album they did. Oh, so all I'm saying with regards to that is they're not an audiophile label. They're a reissue. Whatever the best way they can get the music out there that sounds the best, I think.
I have that Art Pepper. That actually sounds good. I have that.
No, are you getting a cut from any of these sales?
Are you a shill for your friend?
I get free records because he's my friend.
Okay,
so
that's
Rob, what was the jellyfish related record you got there? I love the first two jellyfish albums.
Well, they did reissue the Jellyfish catalog, but Universal has made it harder for them to do repressing. But TVI's is this album. It's a very power pop double. This was a double album, but I think this one's still available on. I
think I heard recently that the Jellyfish are going to be reissued. I don't know exactly.
They only put, it's funny for a band that put out 2 albums,
right?
But they have all this extra material that is made up tons of different albums that Omnivore put out. But there is a fight to reissue this whole catalog of Jellyfish stuff.
They were out of San Francisco then, and they
were a band called Beatnik Beach in San Francisco. I think they put 1 or 2 albums out of that. But
exactly,
they 3 of the members who were at one point were in Jellyfish have a band called the Licorice Quintet, and they're great. They've put out about 4 EPs. Go to their website. I'll put it in the chat. So, yeah.
Well, I was told I could not show the Beatles. However, my initial, I don't know, someone with a PhD here. So, however, I am going with the label that they were associated with. But here, my initial thing was going to talk about all 3 of my labels were going to be originally vanity labels, and it kind of started out. Now I don't know if the Beatles were the first in 1968 with Apple, but a lot of these bands in the late 60s into the 70s got vanity labels when they re-signed with their labels, like Rolling Stones when they left London Records and Atco. They went with Atlantic and they got the Rolling Stone records, and they were allowed to sign other acts. Obviously, Apple signed other acts. Led Zeppelin, Swan Song Records, Grateful Dead Records did their own label, actually. Then it was bought out or distributed by United Artists. And Jefferson Airplane got a sweetheart deal with Grunt Records, was their label through RCA. And RCA must have, I don't know what they held on, the Airplane had on RCA, but RCA spent a shitload of money with Grunt, and hardly any of those records sold. Maybe Hot Tuna, a couple others, but they put out so much weird albums. Even the Youngbloods, Jesse Colin Young, the Youngbloods, when they were in Warner Brothers, they had their own vanity label called Raccoon Records that had some interesting things. But obviously, I want to mention 1968. This is the first single, so I'm only showing this with Beatles. The very first single on Apple Records was "Hey Jude" in 1968. My original copy. This is how it came in this sleeve, not an actual photo picture sleeve in the States. And what's great about it, the whole idea, they used a Macintosh. They went through all these apples. They picked the Macintosh. No, I'm sorry, the Granny Smith apple they picked to use for the photograph for the cover art for Apple, and then a half slice. And of course, during the solo years, they would do modifications on the color of the apple and the slice of the apple. But Peter Asher was their first A&R person. A&R is artist and repertoire, in a way, a talent agent, a producer of sorts. And the first artist they signed was James Taylor. And this album, did mildly well, but none of the Apple records did well at all, except for Badfinger. I didn't pull any Badfinger, but I just wanted to show this album, again, produced by Apple Records. Of course, he would go on with to Warner Brothers and have a hit with Peter Asher produced records. This is a cool record, but it totally bombed. And I'm sure John will know about this record, Doris Troy's record. And she, in the early 60s, she had the hit "Just One Look" was her big hit. At least that I'm aware of. I'm sure she had others, but that's the one I know. George Harrison produced this. It's got Delaney and Bonnie. It's got a soulful, little bit that kind of 1970. I've done videos on the gospel 1970 with Delaney and Bonnie and Billy Preston and so many bands. Leon Russell were doing this kind of rock and roll gospel thing. Obviously George Harrison as well. Ringo Starr, Klaus Voormann. All the Apple core of people and that Harrison clique at the time, and Delaney and Bonnie are on this record. Another George Harrison produced album, which I love this record, and this is one of those early records that got me into the whole world music thing with the Radha Krishna Temple. George Harrison produced. George Harrison helped them finance their vegetarian restaurant, which used to be directly off Soho Square below Oxford Street in London. So this is actually a really good album. I Am Missing You is on here. They did several albums with Ravi Shankar, including a soundtrack of the film Raga, booklet inside. And this is unusual. They put, believe 2 albums they did of the Modern Jazz Quartet. And just thinking modern jazz quartet on Apple seemed just so unusual. I mean, they had the spirit and conceptually interesting idea, but their marketing and the commercialization just was a bomb. And same with when George Harrison went to A&M Records and started Dark Horse Records. These vanity labels, I think obviously the labels want to keep the artist happy, so they let them do a lot of this stuff, but it never really kind of sells very well in certain things. So I was able, I picked up the Apple catalog mostly when they came out. And then the 70s, when I was working in a store, we had a bunch of cutouts came around. The entire Apple catalog was available as cutouts. We called them overpressings. And I bought the entire record, I think for $1 a piece, my cost for those records. So I have every single Apple record. And that's one label I keep in its entity together. Badfinger probably, I think, and Mary Hopkins too was really successful.
It's funny you should show the Doris Troy record. I've been listening to a lot of that sort of country soul music from that sort of period. You mentioned a sort of soulful gospel type thing. So the likes of the first Eric Clapton album, I know you're a fan, Mazzy, but also, as you say, Delaney and Bonnie.
I do like that one, actually.
Yeah, it's a great record. I mean, that's got all those players on it as well. And it is very much that country soul. It's soul music, but it's got it's slightly wonky soul. As I say, there's a big whiff of country about it, but they've all got a real groove to them. Great vocalists, as you say, that sort of gospel vocal thing going on. Yeah, a lovely record, the Doris Troy. I actually bought my copy of it in San Francisco years ago. But the Modern Jazz Quartet album as well, I have that one. That's a really nice record on Apple as well. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I actually also have a UK copy of the Doris Troy. That was my first copy I got for some reason. So mine's a UK. You have the American, I have the UK. So sometimes we have to swap them.
There you go.
All right, John, you're back.
To me. Right, I wanted to mention High Records. So you think about those great Al Green records throughout the 1970s, well, late 60s into the 70s. all produced by Willie Mitchell. But the record I want to show is Ann Peebles' album, Straight from the Heart. Now, this came out, I'm not sure when this came out, it must be early 70s. But all of the Ann Peebles albums on High are worth picking up. They've all got that same production sound as the Al Green albums. And it's, as soon as you hear those songs, you know that it was recorded at High Records. In the UK, those albums came out on London. You can see here that it's on London Records. So all of my stuff on High is on the London label in the UK. But wonderful sounding records. I always think of them as being great summer songs, because it almost feels as though the musicians are almost melting in the studio. It just feels like they're playing in such heat, and it's almost slowed down the music to just this laid back groove. It's clearly the location has influenced the music. So it's so laid back, such a groove to it. Absolutely wonderful records. And of course, talking about Ann Peebles and Al Green, two of the best soul vocalists ever. Incredible vocal performance. Again, it's what I always say about soul singers. You've got to believe them. And somebody like Ann Peebles, you believe everything that she says. She's got a real cry in her voice, So songs on here like Slip, Trouble and Fell in Love, Trouble, Heartaches and Sadness, What You Laid on Me, it's all real heart-wrenching stuff. But you believe every word that she sings. So anything on High, particularly from the 1970s. I think Willie Mitchell bought the label in 1970. So I think it was under his ownership throughout the 70s. So anything on High from that period, certainly worth picking up.
I think here in the States, Fat Possum has the distribution. I don't think they bought it, but they own the. Yeah, and they had the record store day and People's last year. I have that.
Yeah. They really. I mean, I got turned on to her because of the song "I Can't Stand the Rain." That was sort of the biggest hit here, with that great, like, percussive little water dripping opening, which is brilliant. And I gotta give a shout out again. I've said it many times to my friend Coleman. Bittersweet reason I got 6 Ann Peebles albums, beautiful shape albums from his collection that I never had. And out of all the things I got from him, those are amongst my favorite. They're so good. And I'd never took a deep dive into her work until that time.
But it's that production sound. It's that production, Mazzy, the Willie Mitchell production sound. Yeah. It's all about the position of the microphones, the studio itself. You can really hear that it's a High Records production, a Willie Mitchell production when you hear those.
It's so
those
good.
Records from that period.
It's so good, and they sound so good on the. You got to blast. You got to really crank those records, and you just want to keep cranking them. Yeah, definitely.
I have that Al Green 45 box, which I highly recommend. You could still get it. Like his version of "I Want to Hold Your Hand" is so awesome, and that's really the 45 is the way you can get it. Yeah. So.
They did a great version of "Get Back" as well. Talk about Beatles covers, same album, brilliant. Great
Fred
stuff.
loves when we talk about the Beatles. So
hey, no, I'm fine.
Okay, Fred. Okay, your turn.
My turn. So the next one I pulled was, I guess I should take. Mazzy will get angry at me. I should take them out of the sleeves so they don't reflect. I'm gonna mispronounce the name. Someone help me out. Nyege, the Ugandan label that's putting out sort of a kind of vast array of, I think they call it like outsider music. But this was when Billy was a puppy. I actually got mine, the one and only record in my collection that got chewed up. But this is there. So if you're looking in like contemporary African, specifically from that region, most of it. And I believe they organize parties and a festival. I could once a year if I remember right, but and a lot of they have quite the following in the US. So like record stores will get their stuff distributed. I have a couple more that I didn't grab, but I mean this is heavy dance music. What's the name of it? Lithium Blast. This is certainly body music and like really, really deep bass and with horns and dance-based music. They have a festival in Uganda. I went there in 2019. It was stunning. So yeah, they do have a festival. I wasn't wrong about that. Then this one is interesting. I brought this up, I think, actually on our visual episode as well. So maybe I shouldn't have pulled this label, but I would definitely check them out. But this is Duma, and this is almost like an industrial type rhythmic, like drum machine sounds with this almost grindcore scream over it. And I've actually had conversations with Stunt Rock Confusion there about, is this particularly interesting because of the region that it comes from? What if we, take that, which I know generally we want to take into consideration the context of the music that's being played. But if we strip that away for a second, is it any more interesting or less interesting? But certainly there's a metal influence here, if you can call it that. This is abrasive, maybe as the cover would suggest, but it also shows, I think, like these are two very different releases here. Both, I think, visually really nice, but
great cover art. Yeah.
If you're in a record store, like I said, I think they have distribution in the US. Like I just saw one, I picked one up. I should have grabbed it when I was visiting Asheville. So I know they're gaining some ground for people into weirder stuff. I didn't grab that one, Stumpy. That one's sitting over there, but they're getting distribution in the US, and I think they're getting quite the following. So I would certainly check it out if you're interested in exploring something other than US-based music for a change. You Americans, they tend to, be so proud of the US-based stuff. Maybe the UK as well. Maybe they're obsessed with the UK as well, but there's lots of other stuff, obviously.
They seem to have some more diversity. Some weirder things are on the charts in the UK. My experience has been that you would never expect to be like a top 5 hit, but just turn up. I don't mean just novelty, but in a good way. I mean, Wuthering Heights would never have been a number 1 and then a top 10 single in the States for whatever reason. So.
Yeah, but where is Kate Bush from?
In UK.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Americans tend to, if they branch out into one country, it's going to be, if they branch out into one area musically, it's going to be stuff that was delivered here from the UK, is what I mean.
Well, like the British Invasion's a good example, but that's
exactly. Yeah.
All right, Rob.
Okay, Fred will love this. I'm collecting avidly the CTI.
I knew CTI was coming.
CTI.
Yeah, we had a bet.
I was into Freddie Hubbard and his CTI albums, and I've said this before. Around that same period, I kind of like them better than the Miles Davis stuff. But then once you get into the CTI label, you start finding, and I know Mazzy will like these. The 2 Stanley Turrentine albums, Sugar and Cherry, are really good albums, and they seem to have the same people on it. Like it seems like Ron Carter's on every CTI album, and slowly but surely, I got what people might consider, or the scuttlebutt is, this is the best CTI album. This Jim Hall that has Paul Desmond, Chet Baker, and Ron Carter's on there again. This is excellent. The second side of this is just one song that's really good. So, and Rudy, and people talk about Rudy Van Gelder being the best engineer, and you can't really get his mastered Blue Notes, but it seems like most of these CTIs, if not all of them, have Rudy's in the dead wax, so they sound great. I just picked this one up, and I would swear this was an ECM album. This Joe Farrell stuff on CTI, and I'm just getting into it, is some really good stuff. You wouldn't suspect, I highly recommend this thing, and it's got, there's a one with Chick Corea on it that's really good. So big onto these CTI albums. That's
not Julio. Don't say that. I said I wasn't a big CTI fan. People were frothing at people were so angry at me.
I think you should give a shout out to Creed Taylor. I mean, he's CT.
Yeah. Creed, and is he still alive? I think he is.
Thank you. Creed Taylor, thank you for the gatefolds. Or really, I don't even like that. Thank you for the packaging. Don't like the overproduced commercial stuff.
Fred, have you listened to this album?
No, I haven't, but I'm not interested.
Rob, you should check out the...
Okay. Wait a second. By saying stuff like that, do you want us to take what you say seriously and listen to the music you're suggesting? That's all I'm saying.
Okay, Rob. Here's my experience. When I first started collecting jazz, I was scooping up. And by the way, ECM is another label that has a lot of really brilliant releases, but they also have some watered down stuff, and that's the cheap stuff. So I was scooping up all of these ECM releases, all of these CTI releases. I've had 40 to 50 in my collection over the years. Only a few have remained, Red Clay being one of them. I can safely say that I'm not a huge CTI fan. I'm not going to go scoop up every CTI album just because you say I need to have an opinion about the label.
All right. So here I never say scoop up an album. Listen, people, go listen to it on YouTube before you buy anything. Why should you fork over your good money?
Can we let our guest have a moment? He was going to say something. You fucking Americans are too brash.
God, we're too brash.
You're all
I
as
know.
bad as each other. But no, I agree. I agree with Rob. I mean, there's some stinkers on the CTI label, but there's some great records. Red Clay is a brilliant record. You showed Joe Farrell record there. Have you got Upon This Rock, Rob? It's a cracking CTI album, full of drum breaks. It's I should imagine it's been sampled to death, but yeah, a great record. But what you're saying there, Fred, about buying lots of CTI records, there are very few labels where I'd actually go out my way to buy something because it's on that label. The music's got to be good. Most labels have got some stinkers on it, So I'm perhaps going to show a label in a moment where I will pretty much buy anything. But that aside,
as schmaltzy as it is, as overproduced and schmaltzy as it is, I love that first Deodato album with also Sprach Zarathustra. I think that it's a great funky version of that classical piece.
If you're even coming close to the Verve bull crap of the early 70s and comparing it to CTI, but no way am I saying pick up every CTI album. There's a winner in every bunch. It's not even logical. I just got rid of a CTI album. Fred I'm not pronouncing his name right. Gabor Szabo.
Gabor Szabo.
Gabor Szabo.
Yeah, Gabor Szabo.
Listen, it's
Gabor Szabo.
So, and the Herbert Laws stuff. It's
Hubert.
Yeah.
Herbert. So, I am not a shill for one label. I'm just saying, I will listen to something first. If it hit and grasp me that I'll want to get the vinyl, then I'll go buy it. That's usually.
Are you a fan of Sinead O'Connor?
We also know that foot picture that you grabbed that album because it had a foot being licked on it. Rob.
And you know what? Norma Mazelbaum is usually my favorite YouTuber.
Okay.
All right. Whose turn is it?
I'm taking us back to a little bit of normalcy.
Okay.
I want to ask you guys before I go large here, what's the best tagline a record label ever had? A promotional tagline.
I can't even. Name a few taglines. I can't even think of it.
He knows one.
Yeah, he's like, this is it.
This is it. Okay. The best tagline ever is, if it ain't stiff, it ain't worth a fuck. I'm going with Stiff Records. 1976 to 1986, that's how long they lasted originally. Nick Lowe. First, I'm going to show a couple of 45s. I have a bunch more, but I narrowed it down. What I love about this, this is, let's show the label, actually. I might as well show the label. The Stiff label is just so fucking beautiful, I think. Look at that. I think that is a thing of beauty. What's funny about this, I don't know if anyone ever got the joke. This is an EP called Bowie by Nick Lowe. And do you get the joke there? David Bowie had an album called Low. So that's the joke.
Right, very good.
Yeah, so Nick Lowe responded to David Bowie's Low with putting out an EP called Bowie. But this is interesting.
I'm missing the E off the end as well.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is interesting because this is before Warner Brothers. Devo, their version of Satisfaction in the UK was on Stiff. Little different version of it here. Little label with their. Bougie Boy label, so it's more of a custom thing for Devo. This is a UK release there. And this is interesting. I think I showed this and John wasn't aware. I think you mentioned this before. Stiff Records in 1980 actually did a great reissue of this fabulous, probably the first reggae song I ever heard in America on Top 40 was Desmond Dekker, The Israelites. And I just love, isn't it how beautiful this picture, this sleeve is and this thing. But in the early days of Stiff, I was picking up UK versions of their records. In this country, they eventually were picked up by Columbia Records. And I do have a lot of Columbia, but these are 5 that I got original UK presses. And I just love them for so many reasons. Obviously, the first Elvis Costello record, which came with different colored background versions, at least in the States. I don't know about the UK. Were there different colors in the UK too? Anybody know?
Don't know.
But of course, love this record, produced by Nick Lowe. Produced by Nick Lowe, the original. This is original of the first Damned album, one of the great punk records of all time. Now this is Stiff with Island, so Stiff distributed by Island Records at this point. I don't know. Pardon me?
You'll get punk points for showing Damned.
Well, this also. This is the debut by Injury, New Boots and Panties, another fantastic record on Stiff Records. Just the beauty of these labels. They kind of went a little different direction here on these, but I love these UK labels. An artist that I love, Luna Levitch, Stateless. Her big hit later on. I guess after this record, is it this record? New Toy. This is a Lucky Number. That was the first one. Originally came out on red vinyl. Here are some of the other great records on Stiff. And that's Mickey Jupe, Reckless Eric. I have the Jonah Louie record here. This is the American version of it. And of course, someone who way before we had Tiffany or Debbie Gibson, we had Rachel Sweet, this young 14-year-old, 15-year-old ingenue, doing these covers of the girl groups like BABY, Just My Style.
I thought she was American. Is she American?
Oh, I'm sorry. She is American, right? She was the American one they brought. I forgot about that. But I don't know how big. I don't know if anyone can tell me.
I believe she did stuff with Rex Smith. Do you remember Rex Smith?
It
was a teenage heartthrob guy in the
Was
70s.
She very big, John, in the UK? Do you know?
Yeah, I see that album around quite a lot.
That's scary.
The single was big as well. BABY.
BABY, right?
She was 14.
I don't remember her being that young. I thought she was older than that.
Well, we could find that. And then this is an American version of the first Plasmatics record on Stiff as well. So love this. So that's my stiffness.
Very good. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to mention Fania Records because Fred was talking earlier on about just scooping up labels. So whenever he saw a record on a particular label, he would buy it. And this has pretty much been the case with me and Fania Records. So a label out of New York, and obviously it's a Latin label, so it's a lot of salsa, a bit of funk in there as well. But yeah, it's very much a Puerto Rican type sound. Don't see the records around too often here in the UK, so whenever I do see them, I pick them up. But it features artists such as here, Ray Barretto, Johnny Pacheco, Willie Colon. I think in the late 60s, the label put together a super group of all the artists that recorded for the label as the Fania All Stars, and there's some classic live records that came out in the 1970s. One recorded in New York City, which is an absolutely fantastic live record. Live at Cheetah is another one as well. So if you see any of these records, pick them up. This is from the late 70s. I think this is 79. And prior to this, Ray Barretto had very much gone down a fusion sound. So it's a mix of Latin jazz and funk. This, however, is him going back to a salsa sound, and I love this record.
That's a creepy cover.
Yeah, it is a little bit, isn't it?
It's I thought it was like a Jesus hand nail. I thought those were nails in his hand at first.
Yeah, it's a bit weird, isn't it? But yeah, so it is one of those labels that I do try and pick up when anything on it when I see it. But I suppose that's down to the fact that I very rarely see those records over here. So, but yeah,
you know what? Stuff. Doesn't Kraft have those now? Because I think they've done reissues of them.
I don't know.
Yeah, Julio says is currently owned by Kraft. I guess they have the right.
Go to John. Go to Kraft's website. At least in the
States.
They've
done a couple. They've done Cologne. Yeah.
They've done a bunch of the reissues of those.
Right. Cool. But yeah, lovely stuff.
God, thank God we had John here to show something interesting. Because
well, you don't yell at John like you yell at me. Come on, man.
Hey. We won't get okay. So you know what? I mean, I had a few. I had my recent spins, and by the way, just a quick aside. I did do. This is not the label I'm showing, but I did buy the recent Candid stuff, and I would. And Abby Lincoln, there's going to be mixed feelings on her voice, obviously, but this is I just put out a review of these. These came in a bit scary condition straight out of the shrink. But so I guess I could show Candid today, but I also pulled out some of my ESP-Disk stuff. And ESP-Disk has a sort of interesting history. I think Mazzy said that he had some of the rock stuff that they would later.
I have the Pearls Before Swine records where they're infamous not paying their artists at all.
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to say they were it's an interesting kind of story because they were one of the, and their stuff's getting pricey, unfortunately, but they're one of the only labels that was recording, one of the few, we'll put it that way, that was recording new music, or we might say free jazz or free improvisation stuff. But they also, at the same time, were not treating the artists very well. So it was this sort of conflicted relationship where the artists were happy to have their stuff out, like actually get to record and have their stuff out on record, but we're not. They certainly couldn't, make a living here. So, but these are a few of the records I've been really listening to lately. So Sonny Simmons, Staying on the Watch, and this is one of my favorites lately, actually. And then there is a couple of this Get Back label, which someone will let me know. I don't know if they're like kind of sketchy origin labels or if they actually have the rights to this stuff. But Get Back did some of the reissues for cheaper version. Giuseppe Logan Quartet, and this happens to have Milford Graves on it, Eddie Gomez, Don Pullen. Really, I really like this. Well, I'm sort of obsessed with Milford Graves lately, actually, ever since I watched that documentary a couple of years ago. But his stuff is often really expensive. So, and then Albert Eiler Trio, Spiritual Awakening. So those were my three from ESP. But I'm assuming if you I think Alex, or was it Alex Motoric 247 was saying that he has a lot of the ESP stuff. I think it was Alex. I might be wrong, but it used to be fairly cheap. It's kind of getting up there now, but they are getting reissued here and there. So, but yeah, tenuous relationship with ESP. I guess the rock musicians were saying the same thing, Mazzy, in later years.
Well, yeah, that Tom Rapp, who just died about 3 years ago. Pearl Before Swine, one of the most interesting psychedelic freak folk before they called it freak folk, dirgy, New York. Very interesting artists. I have those ESP discs of those original copies. They were pressed into the early 70s, and some came out, I guess, starting 67, 68 into the early 70s, and just infamous. They would later go to Reprise Records, and then he would record for Blue Thumb after that. But they're famous stories of them getting totally screwed. I think he got his rights back, and they did a CD and LP reissue a few years ago. So some of the recordings, I don't know in what form or how that they got back. Unfortunately, some of these artists get rights back and get royalties too late in their lives to enjoy anything. And it's not that substantial, but maybe they get the publishing or something. But you're hearing.
Sorry, Mazzy. I didn't mean to cut you off. Julio mentioned, the ESP is not known for its high quality sound or it's certainly not an audiophile label for sure. I don't know where the rights are floating around with all of that stuff, but it would be great if even digital, masters, some of the stuff was reissued somehow. But
here we go.
I'll go quickly through mine because I'm just going to talk about this great reissue label. A lot of people, I think, know about Sam Records out of France. Is a one-man operation, and he's putting out a lot of these. When those American jazz artists went over to Europe and recorded albums there, he's putting a lot of them out. They're excellent quality, excellent sound. This was my first one. This is such a nice album. This is really affordable. This Monk soundtrack to Dangerous Liaison, where he recorded a lot of his music specifically for the album. You can get this thing for $20. I highly recommend it. It's really. I know they came out with a record store day that was like 2 or 3 discs, but this single one is pretty available and you can get it affordable. Did a bunch of these Chet Baker. There are 3 of these reissues. I have a bunch stored everywhere, but love the Sam Records. I know they have a Lester Young, his last recording that came out that's currently being available. And then their things which is interesting. I don't think a lot of labels do this. Their titles don't go out of print. They just go on a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th pressing, and they label them that way. So that's all.
Were those 10 inches of the Chet Baker stuff?
No, these Chet Bakers are full albums.
They sound great. A lot of those recordings had come on Barclay Records in France, never released in this country. They're French recordings.
Here's someone who stands by their stuff. And Fred was talking about these candid releases seem to be pressed in someone's garage with a bathtub.
It's that New Jersey pressing plant.
Independent that people think suck. I have on order, and I think Mazzy has this Daniel Bird live recording with who's the other guy, Mazzy? From Sam. They initially released a bunch.
Bobby Jaspar? Is it Bobby Jaspar?
Bobby Jaspar. Yeah. So I think the guy's name is Fred, who owns the label. He inspects every record. He pulled back. I'm not getting my copy because he found defects in the pressings. How many labels will do stuff like that? So, yeah.
I don't have any black jazz label. I know about them, but I don't have any.
Oh, I have them. Not Run Out the Groove. Real Gone Music is doing all those. And they're really good pressings and they're cheap. You can go on Amazon right now and get a lot of those black jazz titles for under $20. And I have the Henry Franklin, the Skipper. That's a good title to get. Black jazz.
Well, my final, I decided to do this based on my typical cheating thing, because I like to cheat. Instead of picking one label, I like the concept, and I've been, people have done, I don't know if they've done videos like this, they probably have. I just wanted to show some white label promos. Now, just because these are records that I actually got at the time they came out. My very first promo that I was given when I worked in a record store was this Grateful Dead record, Bear's Choice Volume 1. Of course, there was never a Bear's Choice Volume 2. I always loved the Warner Brothers promo, but of course, in those days, we didn't understand the value, not in terms of money, but in terms of quality. And the theory goes that white label promos are very collectible because they're usually amongst the very first records pressed off the in the first batch, and they're the ones slapped up and given out to radio stations, disc jockeys, reviewers, and so they tend to sound the best possible of that edition. Now there are exceptions, obviously, good and bad, and I find if you find them out in the wild these days, a lot of them are in really good shape because a lot of people in the record business would get so many promos. They rarely played their records over and over and over again. And same with me. I mean, I actually, mine are well taken care of, but they're in pristine shape. this is one that I really like just because this is Elvis Costello, and I didn't have for years a copy of Almost Blue, that cover, which is parodies the Blue Note Burrell cover. And what's interesting about this white label promo from Columbia, he introduces a song. So it's one of those special editions where he has a little introduction, him talking in between every cut on the record. So it's not your typical white label promo where you're listening to the normal record. It's for radio stations primarily, but I just like the idea of it. And this is another sampler from Ronaldo and Claire when that 4-hour, 5-hour, 6-hour, whatever it was, Dylan Fiasco movie came out from the Hard Rain tour. This is an EP Columbia put out, white label promo. And amongst my favorite is almost like what I always refer to as Bob Dylan's sort of live punkish type record. And it's, for years I didn't like this record very much, but in the last decade, I put this on and blast it, and it's really a powerful rendition. Of course, a white label promo.
Does he have Guy Liner on in that photo?
He does. He had Pancake Whiteface on that tour. Yeah, it's like the Gypsy Carnival tour of a wacko tour. And I saw one of these shows in Austin, Texas, by the way, in 1976. And Roger McGuinn and Mick Ronson and Joan Baez and T-Bone Burnett, and it was a whole Scarlett Rivera on violin, and it was really an interesting tour. But this is a great rockin' record. I mean, again, we all know how Dylan he redoes his songs in so many ways that you don't even recognize the songs these days. And then lastly, one of the best sounding records I have is Hejera, the great album by Joni Mitchell. Jocko's on here and the bass on here. This is a really, really well recorded record and probably one of my favorite of my white label promo collection. So for this one, instead of going with one label, I decided to go literally the label of a white promo label. I thought,
yeah, you cheated. That's okay.
Well, no, I mean, we said our favorite labels, so didn't say record companies. So
cool. Can I show something I've been listening to?
Yeah, yes, please, John. Thank Jesus.
Sorry, Mazzy, just to cut across.
No. I think we should end up with what we're listening to. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I've been on a real Hammond jazz kick recently over the last few months. That sort of that sort of groovy Hammond jazz sound, which I think sounds good on a Saturday night. It's got that groovy thing going on, or a Sunday morning equally. It's just a classic sound. And I've been listening to a lot of Lonnie Smith. So this is his album from about 66, isn't it? Finger Licking Good. Just a fantastic sounding record. I think on here you've got lots of George Benson, King Curtis, and Blue Mitchell on horns. It's a lovely record. So I've been listening to a lot of this sort of stuff. The Blue Note reissue series just put out Moon Rapping, the Brother Jack McDuff album as well, which sounds great. So yeah, a lot of Jimmy Smith, that sort of thing, So that's what I've been listening to. But Lonnie Smith in particular, he made great music right to the end. He only died last year. He actually put out an album last year on Blue Note, I think it was, which is really worth a listen if you get a chance. I think even Iggy Pop guests on it as well. So made great music right to the end. This is his debut from the mid-60s, and it's, I say, a lovely listen, a lovely copy as well.
Who produced it? Is that a Columbia house producer?
It's produced by John Hammond. It's on CBS.
Yeah, John, of course, Columbia house producer. Yeah, I mean, one of the great producers. Yeah, I've never seen that album. It's funny.
Yeah, no, it's a great album cover as well.
I always get in the Hammond mood in the summer for some reason. That kind of funky. That's it, Yeah. Do I show something or Rob or?
Why don't you go?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got two more that I've been listening to still a lot lately, and so I just found this AZ's "Do or Die," which for anyone that's into classic hip hop, you probably know this record, but I finally found it. It's got a little writing on the sleeve, but otherwise clean, some ringwear. So I've been re-diving into some of the like golden era hip hop stuff lately, but this is one of my favorites, and I wanted it for years, so I was super happy to find this. It probably runs like $100 online, but I found it for 40, thank God. So was finally able to grab it and didn't have to pay the $100. And then I've still been, I don't know why, I keep returning to this record as well, My Bloody Valentine, but it's funny, the digital version of this is not this. This is that recent, I guess it's an all analog cut, whatever, you know, yada yada yada. But whoever mastered it, I should know. But it sounds really, really good on vinyl. And there's if you listen to it digitally, it's like almost, it exists. It's real noisy, right? It exists all in the sort of mids and highs, but with this remaster, whoever did it, you can finally hear what's going on in the bass region, which maybe, I guess, purists that maybe have the original copy and fell in love with that sound may really dislike this, but I absolutely love it. So
I've never heard that record.
I have that version too. I only got into that version in the last, like during lockdown. It's one of those records I just always missed. And I think I kept hearing Hannah, the Omaha introvert, like just going on and on about one person. And I like her direction in psychedelia and that kind of British music, and obviously punk and, I don't know, shoegaze, excuse me. Yeah. I didn't know what shoegaze was until like 3 years ago, or math rock. I don't know these new terms. You kids and
I've always been drawn to that. I've never heard it, but I've always been interested in it because of the story behind the making of it. The fact that it took so long and it nearly bankrupted creation. I think didn't Alan McGee have to remortgage his house to finish off paying for the record? You know, so it's a fascinating story behind it, but I've never actually heard a note of it. So,
yeah, I didn't know any of that. It's on MBV Records, so they're the ones reissuing, but it's this nice like Stoughton jacket. I mean, this is heavy and it sounds really exceptional. So if y'all are looking for, and I think it's fairly affordable so it says Domino and then MBV. So this is the recent reissue, but yeah, I highly recommend.
Is that Latin? Like Domino oste cadamare vida fodum sudum vidum shittum.
You got a head shake from Rob on that one, Mazzy.
Yeah.
What have you been listening to?
So Rob? I got some Gars Brzezat. No, I'm joking. I picked up this Phineas Newborn Jr., who I think Violently Pleased did a reissue of his first album, and that kind of got him in my ear. I was in Amoeba and found this OG on this Contemporary Green label. It's him, Elvin Jones, and Ray Brown doing this album, and he's great. This is such a good album. Recommend it. It doesn't go for a lot of dough. I don't know. It hasn't really been reissued, but recommend that. And then Victor Feldman. Sounds like a great jazz musician, doesn't it?
Marty's brother.
He was a British dude who came over here, I think, in the 50s to the U.S. and was a vibraphonist, but became a pretty utility like every instrument. But this is the first recording of Scott LaFaro ever on an album.
Wow. Oh, really? It's very homoerotic cover, isn't it? I'm serious.
Hey,
look at it.
Whatever.
Show the damn cover. Look at it. It's two sailor boys in the back on a boat.
Or some people would read the text and say, oh, this dude just got in a boat and went across the ocean to come, which doesn't make sense. How does he get on the Pacific Ocean if he's
in that tiny boat?
In that tiny boat. And, pretty Jewy, Feldman and Levy, You don't see that.
Well, LaFaro's wonderful. I mean, Scott LaFaro is.
Well, yeah. and I do. The only other Victor Feldman album is Kevin Gray has a record label where he put out one album, a Victor Feldman album, and that Nautilus put out. But this is really good. Victor Feldman plays several instruments. It's good. And then you got Scott LaFaro. So there you go. That's what I've been listening to.
Okay, I'm closing out in the last 2 minutes here, and then we'll say goodbye. I only have one record here. This is a reissue, first time on vinyl, I believe, of a comp from David Sylvian's 2000 various recordings, collaborations he's done with people like Ruchi Sakamoto. Obviously, his brother David Jensen is on some of the tracks, drumming and percussion, and some of the instrumentation. David Sylvian, I've done feature on him. He was original member of the band Japan, which originally started a little glammy. I first saw them when their first album came out in '78 in London, just accidentally at a club called Dingwalls. And this is a double record. This has some alternate versions and outtakes and things from different albums that he's done and singles and online downloads only. And it's a lovely collection, double record. I just heard, and I haven't, apparently his Twitter account announced that in September they're putting out Manophone, which I like on vinyl. But more than anything else, one of the 2 records in my wish list is Blemish. Very electronic, minimal, just a gorgeously dark, slow album. And the vinyl online is like $300, $400, $500. I think they did 2,000 to begin with, and apparently it's coming in September. And I find when his records go up, they sell out really fast. But David Sylvian has this beautiful low baritone voice, and just it's a stunning, beautiful record. So I love this. Anything with David Sylvian, Japan, all the offshoots of that, I think are just really great. All his collaborations, just some really. He does something with what's the trumpet player, the Norwegian trumpet player Herv, who's on Rune Gramophone. He's done some things with him as well. Blanking out right now. So that's the end of my thing. So we're over in time. We have someone waiting in the lobby who has a family and they're going through some trauma. So I think we can do 1 minute of closing out here.
Well, thank you, John, for saving the show. You know, because it would have just been us 3. It would have been
just bickering for an hour.
I'm off to elocution lessons to learn how to pronounce Victor Salzbo. Barbara Salzbo.
Gabor Szabo.
Gabor. Jaja Gabor.
Now, the thing about these live streams, they do stay up. They'll be up eventually. They'll populate and be up again. And we all wish good things for Chris and his family. We haven't heard what's going on, but I think it'll be, Arv Henriksen. I'm sorry. That's the horn player I was thinking of that. But our kudos and our love to Chris. And hopefully he'll be back next time.
Mm-hmm. Bye, everyone.
Is that it?
Cool. Cheers.